3.5 years after the UK voted to leave the European Union, MPs have resoundingly voted in favour of the government's Brexit bill. The legislation now paves the way for Boris Johnson to deliver his promise that the country will no longer be a member state of the EU by the end of next month. The Prime Minister won the vote easily, 358 to 234, with 6 Labour MPs backing the government. The withdrawal agreement says the UK will leave the European Union on the 31st of January, but allows for a transition period until the end of 2020. During this time, the UK will still have to abide by EU rules. There will be a so-called divorce bill of around £33 billion paid to Brussels for commitments the UK has already signed up to. And the agreement sets out a plan for the border with Northern Ireland, effectively creating a customs barrier down the Irish Sea. With more, here's our Deputy Political Editor, John Pienaar.
We're leaving. We're through the looking glass. Everything looks the same, but nothing will be the same again. The last lonely protester was there, fighting a cause that today became officially lost.
The ayes to the right, 358. The noes to the left, 234.
A thumping victory for Boris Johnson's EU divorce deal. But from the start today, his big win was guaranteed. He came with an appeal for unity on his terms, to seek reconciliation in tones of triumph.
This is the time when we move on and discard the old labels of leave and remain. In fact, the very words seem tired to me. And so now is the moment to come together and write a new and exciting chapter in our national story, to forge a new partnership with our European friends, to stand tall in the world, to begin the healing.
This moment in history was his. 3.5 years after the referendum, the new PM felt strong enough to declare Britain after Brexit would set its own rules and standards, not follow the EU's.
The very essence of the opportunity of Brexit is that we will no longer outsource these decisions. With renewed national self-confidence, we will take them ourselves.
And that's what worried his beaten rival.
We warned before the general election the Prime Minister's Brexit deal was a terrible deal for our country, and we still believe it's a terrible deal today. This deal will be used as a battering ram to drive us down the path of yet more deregulation and towards a toxic deal with Donald Trump and...
What's new in the withdrawal agreement bill? The pledge to match EU workers' rights, like other earlier compromises, has gone. Ministers now say a new UK law will guarantee those rights. On child migrants, no EU obligation now to take in unaccompanied minors with British relatives. But the PM says the UK will go on taking them in. And no extended Brexit transition. The law will require the UK's clear of EU rules by December 2020, with or without a deal. So the PM winning the Brexit war doesn't mean peace. The SNP sees Brexit as a spur to independence.
The people of Scotland must have their say over their future, rather than the broken Brexit Britain that he wishes to impose upon us.
The election and Brexit has left a bitter legacy. Wounded Brexiteers feeling vindicated, Remainers defiant on their pro-European values.
Those values are now under threat from this Trumpian populist government, from right-wing populism and bigots everywhere.
We were told we were fascists, we were Nazis, we were extremists. Yeah. And what did we want? All we wanted was to honour the referendum.
Brexiteer Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg kept a low profile during the election, not today.
At last we've got the result that we need. We will now get Brexit, a majority of 124, and the sun is metaphorically shining.
And look at this, at the bottom of your screen, the UK's celebrity PM signing autographs for Tory MPs. So, reason for celebration in government tonight? We'll leave the EU by January the 31st at the latest. But defining and negotiating Britain's future relationship with the EU and the world could be tougher and take longer than Boris Johnson predicts. No doubt who's in charge now, or whose job it is to make Brexit work.
More from John in a moment. So this is the Brexit timetable for next year. Both the Commons and the Lords will debate and vote on the government's Brexit bill in January before it becomes law. Then at the end of the month, the UK will leave the EU and the transition period begins, during which a new trade deal with Brussels will be negotiated. But at the end of the year, December the 31st, is the cut-off date for an agreement, and failure to reach a deal would mean tariffs on trade. Let's talk now to John Pienaar, who's at Westminster. John, this was a significant moment today in the Commons, but huge Brexit challenges lie ahead next year.
Absolutely right. The pledge and the slogan, get Brexit done, it certainly did its job, Clive. It gave Boris Johnson control of his party. It helped give his party the election. But nothing in politics is truly simple, and certainly not Brexit. Today in Parliament, the Johnson administration cruised past an historic milestone. But it's fair to say we still have no very clear idea of the destination, or even with any certainty how long it will take to get there. Now, ruling out any extension to the Brexit transition that may or may not mean Britain leaves without an EU deal. Some in government believe that we could end up with a phased trade deal after long negotiations stretching over many months, maybe years. And as for the home front, well, we know what Thatcherism means. We've heard about Blairism, but you don't hear talk of Johnsonism. And maybe that's because until the election, he was so busy getting around and getting over political obstacles, there was no time or space to develop a guiding philosophy. Still, let's give it a name. But his mission now to do away with austerity, to unite the country north and south, rich and poor, that counts as a big idea. But whether or not you call it that, whether or not you call it Johnsonism, it's still a very long way from being able to say mission accomplished.
John, thank you for that. John Pienaar there, live at Westminster.